Pasadena, California, June 17th, 2018. Thousands gather at the Pasadena Convention Center for AlienCon, a 3-day convention to explore the mysteries of ancient civilization, extraterrestrial existence, and the unexplained phenomena of our universe.
I am about to introduce you to a man that in 1968 published a book by the name of Chariots of the Gods. The legend, Erich von Däniken.
Erich von Däniken takes the stage before an audience of 3,500 people, men and women who are convinced that mankind's past and its future is more extraordinary and more hopeful than they had been led to believe by mainstream science.
I would like to say that over the course of history on planet Earth, we've seen great men. Moses being one of those, Abraham Lincoln being another. I'd like to honor you in that same group of men.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you. It all started because of religious doubts. That was the power in me to find out what is God. By the way, I still am a deep believer in God. So simply, I had doubts in my own religion. In the meantime, I'm 83 years old. The gods love me.
Since 1968, it's been 50 years. How has the reception of the ancient astronaut theory, in your opinion, changed over 50 years?
It was an immediate bestseller in Germany and in Switzerland. Then it was sold to the United States. It was a bestseller here. And soon as it was a bestseller, I was, of course, attacked. I was crushed down practically by every scientific community, by every scientist, by newspapers. They all found this is nonsense what this young Swiss fellow is writing here. This is garbage. So I was attacked. And I'm not the one who gives up. So I started to fight and fight and fight. So in total, I have written now 41 titles, roughly 76 million copies in 32 languages. Not bad.
In the 50 years since Chariots, what do you think are some of the best pieces of evidence that have come forward that you did not cover in Chariots?
Well, of course, all these years, always new material have come. And we know so much more about the Great Pyramid. We detected the rooms, shafts, corridors, things inside, which I never knew in 1966 when I made Chariots of the Gods. Now, the sequel of Chariots of the Gods is already on the market, and there is, of course, material in there which you have never seen and you would not believe on this planet.
Switzerland, 1968. Researcher and writer Erich von Däniken publishes his first book, Chariots of the Gods. In it, he introduces the revolutionary notion that the Nazca lines were created by the Nazca people after witnessing extraterrestrials using advanced technology and a sophisticated knowledge of mathematics.
Erich von Däniken was one of the first to actually do aerial flyovers of the Nazca region and was one of the first researchers to not only look at the diagrams on the plain floor, but also in the hills of Nazca, we find intricate mathematical diagrams that have never been documented before.
When you fly over the desert, you see down gigantic lines. Seen from the air, they give you the imagination of airstrips because they start abruptly, end abruptly, sometimes they cross. They look like airstrips.
When Erich drew the comparison as to how this looks like a network of runways, this to draw a visual comparison to what they look like from above. They are not runways, they would not support the weight of anything physically landing there.
Some theorize that they were runways. I don't believe that for a moment. Hell, I was in the Air Force for 6 years, and none of the aircraft that we had would be capable of landing on that as a runway. I think it's more of a attention getter. You can see them from space. So I think that it's a signal.
In the more than 4 decades since the publication of Chariots of the Gods, Erich von Däniken's controversial theories concerning the Nazca lines have continued to spark widespread study. Some scholars, after discovering curious patterns in the numerous designs, suggest that the Nazca lines might actually be one of the earliest known examples of applied geometry.
They were interesting geometric figures. They could draw a figure, and then they could envision making it even bigger. You're making angles, you're approximating distances, and that innate skill of us to deal with geometry, I think, translates to our earliest art forms.
It's interesting as you look at these designs on the plains of Nazca. Some of them have very, very interesting relationships to the skies overhead. There's a very famous glyph of a spider with one leg that extends way, way out. And if you take that and flip it into sort of a mirror situation, what you can plainly see is that the spider is meant to represent the constellation of Orion, and the spider's leg, the extension, is meant to represent the star Sirius. So whoever put these designs on the plains of Nazca understood the same thing that all of the other ancient cultures before them understood, which is that there's some critical importance to understanding Orion and Sirius and their relationship to the Earth.
But could the Nazca figures really have had a more profound purpose? Some ancient astronaut theorists believe they were created as a means of communicating messages to the gods. Messages that may have also included a plea for them to return. Ancient astronaut theorists believe the mysterious figure known as El Astronauto could hold a clue to the Nazca mystery.
And they call him the spaceman. And he appears to have a space helmet or something on his head, and he's got one arm up and he's waving. And it would seem this is one of the sky gods. Or if he's not one of the sky gods himself, he's one of the Nazca people who's waving to the sky gods and saying, "Hi, we're here. Come and land. We know you came here before. Come back."
You have a figure that looks like E.T. with the big eyes and the big head, and one hand is pointing to the sky and the other is pointing to Earth, as if it was some type of a message. Hey, something happened here. We were visited by beings from above.
Chichen Itza, Mexico. Located on the Yucatan Peninsula are the ruins of an ancient Mayan city that thrived from 750 to 1200 AD. It was here in 1969 that Erich von Däniken had an amazing realization involving the city's central pyramid of El Castillo.
I was standing before this great pyramid. I understood nothing. I took every possible literature from Central American archaeologists to learn what's this all about. And then I learned again, they are talking of visitors from outside. Of course, they call them gods.
According to the ancient Maya myths, their main deity was Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, Cucumatz, all those different names for the exact same deity, which was described to be a winged or a flying serpent or a flying snake. Whatever it was that they saw up in the sky could best be described as a flying snake.
When we're looking across the world, Chichen Itza is a very important location. It is one of those places where it is said that the gods descended to and decreed a fate of mankind. And there is one specific pyramid, El Castillo, the castle, where you see an intricate light show happening on specifically the equinoxes, March 21st and September 21st.
In the early morning, you see the sun rising up, and while the sun goes up, you see on the stairway light and shadow, triangles of light and shadow. They are produced because of the 9 platforms. The light and shadow triangles slowly go down the step to the pyramid until the sun is up there. The message is absolutely clear. God Kukulkan visited the earth and disappeared again with the promise to return in a faraway future. So they have given this whole information of the return of the gods into their temple.
And I think this is one of the great things which Erich has done, not just in the story of Chichen Itza, but of so many other aspects on other places in this world as well, whereby he focuses on certain details and says, look, this is important. This is a detail which is extremely difficult to create. This is something which traditional archaeology tends to overlook.
By making a connection between the ancient Mayas' knowledge of astronomy and their precise architecture, Erich von Däniken was convinced that there was much more to his ancient alien hypothesis than he had imagined. For further proof, he looked to another Mayan temple, one that housed what some say was the first ancient astronaut, Lord Pakal.
At the ancient Mayan city of Palenque was a tomb that was discovered in the 1950s. And inside this tomb was a lid on this sarcophagus for Lord Pakal. And that lid is very highly decorated with a picture of Lord Pakal. And in that picture, he's doing some really unusual things.
You see a man bending forward, almost like a racing motorcyclist. He has his nose on some kind of oxygen mask. He uses his upper hand to manipulate the knot. You see his lower hand, he manipulates some controls. He's sitting on a kind of chair in a sort of capsule.
When Erich looked at that lid, he saw a Mayan king in a rocket ship. And that guy was returning to the stars, going back into space. It was an exciting interpretation, and it was one of the main things in Chariots of the Gods. And when other people looked at that lid and saw his explanation, they had to agree with him.
In 1968, just 1 year before Neil Armstrong's epic spaceflight, a book was published that forever changed the way many in the scientific, religious, and creative communities would view their home planet. Written by Swiss author Erich von Däniken, Chariots of the Gods attempted to prove that alien explorers had visited the Earth thousands of years ago.
When I was a young man, I was educated as a strict Catholic in a boarding school. And there we had to make translations of part of the Bible, Greek to Latin, Latin to German. For example, in the first book of Moses, before the Lord descends on the holy mountain, Moses was ordered to construct a gate around the mountain, otherwise the Israelites would be damaged. I was shocked. I said, this is impossible. My God, he would never use first a gate to protect himself or to protect the Israelites. What are they talking about? And now the work started. I started to read thousands of pages of the beginning of religions, of every mythology. It's always the same story. Of course, with different names, with different heroes. Somebody descends from the sky to the humans. Our forefathers could not understand it. They believed that these are some gods. I was shocked. I asked the question, were primitive humans influenced by extraterrestrials, not gods? And if it all was like I suggested, where is the proof? So you start trying to find at least indications. That's what I have done now for at least 45 years. You have pictorial evidence, you have artifacts in archaeology, and you have what's come out of the old literature. Hundreds of indications which you cannot deny anymore.
What it means is that we need new explanations for human origins, that perhaps we're not alone in the universe, and that human-like beings came to this planet from some other planet elsewhere in the cosmos. I think that's a very good idea myself.
And it really excited people. It was a new way of looking at the past, looking at ancient civilizations, and it put this very modern space-age spin to the whole thing.
Chariots of the Gods caused a sensation, fueled in no small part by the popular response to books like Frank Herbert's Dune, television shows like Star Trek, and feature films like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
The time was ripe because everybody was talking of possible space travel, of possibility of extraterrestrials. So it was all wonderful coming together, but it was not planned. I was accused that I have chosen the timing. So it was all a calculation. It was not a calculation. It was not a timing, because I was writing on this story since I was a student.
Since the date of its first publication, von Däniken's book has seen more than 40 printings and can be read in more than 30 languages. But Chariots of the Gods was a bestseller that might never have been published.
I sent this manuscript to 20 German publishers. No one was interested. The manuscript 20 times came back. It's not professional, we are not interested, and so on.
After a Swiss newspaper printed excerpts of it on a weekly basis, more than 10,000 copies of the book were sold before ever hitting the market.
So it was a running bestseller, starting in Switzerland first, then going over to Germany, and then the rest of the world. They had to print and print and print and print. It was absolutely incredible.
In 1970, a feature-length documentary was released to theaters, followed by dozens of best-selling books and growing legions of fans and supporters.
Chariots of the Gods was tremendously influential. It somehow spoke to people who want to believe.
When I was a boy, Chariot of the Gods was one of the books I first read. I mean, I ripped it apart. I digested it. I couldn't get enough of it.
I just fell in love with that book because it really opened up all kinds of new questions. And von Däniken was able to point out many anomalies in history that the mainstream archaeologists can't answer very well. He had what was a revolutionary new idea, that of gods from outer space coming to the planet, helping create civilization.
When I first read Chariots of the Gods, I couldn't put that book down because it answered a whole bunch of questions that I had, and it was a great combination of archaeology and adventure. And it's just a wonderful way to see the world and pursue these ancient mysteries.
And it truly was, I think, the catalyst for what people like I do today, and that is to talk about the mysteries and the unusual and the paranormal. He paved the way for a lot of us to talk about these strange stories. And that continues to grow, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. People want answers to questions that they can't answer themselves.